Imagine coming home after a long, exhausting day, your mind set on finally unwinding in the comfort of your own space. Maybe you're looking forward to a quiet dinner, a favorite show, or just a moment of peace away from the chaos outside. But as you step inside, you're hit with a sharp, stinging sensation. Your eyes water, your throat burns, and you start coughing uncontrollably. The air, which should be safe and familiar, suddenly feels hostile. You rush to the window, only to see a thick, acrid haze creeping in, curling around the edges of the glass. Even with every window and door tightly shut, the smoke finds its way inside, invading your sanctuary. For the residents of Gray's Landing in Portland, Oregon, this wasn't just a bad dream or a one-time scare. It became a relentless, recurring nightmare that stretched on for months. The culprit, tear gas and pepper balls, fired by federal officers at the ICE facility next door during nightly protests. The chemical clouds didn't just stay outside, they drifted, uninvited, into people's homes. Inside, families, seniors, and people with disabilities found themselves trapped. Their apartments, meant to be safe havens, were suddenly transformed into front lines, filled with choking fumes meant for crowd control, not for innocent bystanders. Night after night, residents scrambled to protect themselves, stuffing towels under doors, sealing windows with plastic, and huddling together in back rooms, desperate to keep the toxic air at bay. Some even wore masks indoors, hoping for relief. The stress was unending. Sirens blared, lights flashed, and the sounds of shouting and chaos outside signaled another night of fear, anxiety, and burning lungs. Sleep became impossible, and the sense of safety was shattered. These weren't activists or protesters, they were ordinary people, families and neighbors, just trying to live their lives. Yet they found themselves caught in a conflict they never asked for. Their homes turned into battlegrounds. Children coughed through the night, parents worried over every breath, and those with asthma or other health issues suffered the most. The place that should have been their refuge was now a source of danger, and this wasn't just a single incident. Night after night, week after week, the same terror returned until the community could take no more. The residents realized they had to act. In a bold move, they decided to fight back, banding together to sue the very government department responsible for poisoning their air, demanding justice and the right to breathe safely in their own homes. Why did this Portland block become a flashpoint? It all centered on the ICE facility by the Willamette River. For many, these buildings symbolize harsh federal immigration policies, places where families are separated and lives upended. Portland's long activist history fueled regular protests, especially as ICE arrests surged in Oregon. Demonstrators gathered to disrupt operations and draw attention to what they saw as injustice. Tensions escalated. Peaceful protests turned into nightly standoffs, sometimes involving vandalism and confrontations. The federal response grew more forceful, creating a cycle of protest and crackdown. The ICE facility's location, right next to affordable housing, meant the conflict spilled directly into people's homes. Residents of Gray's Landing found themselves living beside a battleground they never asked for. Facing an unlivable situation, Gray's Landing residents found themselves at a breaking point. The air around their homes was often thick with chemical agents, making daily life not just uncomfortable, but dangerous. In response, they joined forces with Reach Community Development and a coalition of legal advocacy groups to take a bold step, suing the Department of Homeland Security. Their demand was clear and urgent: ban DHS from using tear gas and chemical munitions anywhere near residential buildings. Residents and supporters rallied, holding signs and speaking out, determined to protect their homes and families from further harm. The lawsuit argued that these weapons were being used recklessly, with little regard for the people living inside their apartments. Innocent families, including children and seniors, were forced to breathe toxic air, even when they stayed indoors with windows shut tight. Importantly, the lawsuit didn't seek a nationwide ban on these tactics. Instead, it called for strict limits, allowing the use of chemical agents only if there was a clear and imminent threat to life, not simply as a crowd control measure. At its core, the case was about fundamental constitutional rights: the right to bodily integrity, the right to feel safe in your own home, and the right to be free from unwanted government harm. These are rights that every American should be able to count on. The plaintiffs claim that DHS's repeated use of tear gas and chemical agents violated these rights, filling their homes with toxic substances and causing both physical and emotional distress. This lawsuit marked a turning point, shifting the focus from the protesters in the streets to the bystanders, the residents whose lives were upended by the ongoing conflict, even though they had no part in the demonstrations. Ultimately, the case aimed to hold DHS accountable for the collateral damage inflicted on the entire community, demanding justice and safety for everyone who calls Gray's Landing home. The lawsuit described a disturbing arsenal used by federal officers. Tear gas, CS gas, was the main culprit, causing burning eyes, coughing, and breathing trouble, especially dangerous in enclosed apartments. Officers also used pepper balls, which burst into clouds of irritant powder, and other chemical agents. Residents said these munitions were fired near and around their building, not just at protesters. The lawsuit alleged these weapons were used preemptively and excessively, often without any real threat. Chemical agents lingered for hours, seeping through windows and ventilation, turning the neighborhood into a contaminated zone. The plaintiffs argued DHS treated their homes as collateral damage in a nightly chemical assault. For Gray's Landing residents, the nightly clashes brought real suffering. Families, seniors, and people with disabilities described gasping for air, burning eyes, and sleepless nights. Children coughed through the night. Parents felt helpless to protect them. The long-term health effects of repeated exposure were unknown and terrifying. The psychological toll was severe. Veterans reported PTSD flare-ups, and everyone lived in constant anxiety. Home, meant to be a place of safety, became a source of relentless stress. Many residents couldn't afford to move, trapped in a toxic environment. Their stories turned the lawsuit into a powerful account of human suffering. The government's tactics had devastating consequences for innocent people. The lawsuit cast local residents as victims, caught in the crosshairs of an aggressive federal crackdown. Plaintiffs described a city under siege, where families felt unsafe in their own homes and the streets were filled with fear and confusion. They argued that the government's response was not just excessive, but fundamentally changed the character of their neighborhoods. But the Department of Homeland Security told a very different story. According to DHS, their officers were not facing peaceful demonstrators, but violent riots that threatened public safety. They pointed to graffiti, fires, and barricades as evidence of chaos, and described being targeted by projectiles and fireworks night after night. DHS insisted that the use of tear gas, rubber bullets, and other crowd control munitions was not only justified, but necessary to defend the federal courthouse and protect their personnel from harm. They argued that without these measures, the violence would have spiraled out of control. At a press conference, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem doubled down, vowing to prosecute anyone who targeted federal agents. She framed the protesters as not just dissenters, but as allies of dangerous criminals, and warned that law enforcement would not back down. This rhetoric fueled a hardline response, with federal officials portraying the conflict as a battle to restore order and protect the rule of law. For many, it felt like the city had become a testing ground for the limits of government force. Two starkly different realities emerged. Residents and civil rights advocates saw an abuse of power, with innocent people harmed by indiscriminate tactics. Meanwhile, DHS maintained it was under siege, forced to respond to nightly threats and escalating violence. Plaintiffs demanded a ban on chemical agents and crowd control weapons unless there was an immediate threat to life. DHS countered that the nightly unrest made such restrictions impossible, insisting that their actions were essential to maintain order. The case quickly became a clash of narratives. Innocent families and peaceful protesters on one side, embattled federal agents on the other. Each side accused the other of distorting the truth and endangering the community. Ultimately, it was up to the court to decide whose version of events would shape the law and what standards would govern the use of force in the future. At stake were not just the rights of protesters and the authority of law enforcement, but the very limits of government power in times of crisis. The outcome would affect how future protests are policed and how communities are protected. The court's decision could set a powerful precedent, shaping how force is used in American cities for years to come. Oregon's political leaders quickly took sides. Many criticized DHS's heavy-handed tactics and the impact on Portland residents. Senators and representatives demanded transparency about the munitions used and questioned the justification for such force. Senator McClay and others condemned federal immigration raids and the deployment of agents against protesters. Previous clashes between state and federal authorities fueled local resistance to outside intervention. Local officials saw the federal response as overreach, backing residents' calls for accountability. Their public pressure amplified the lawsuit's demands for change. This lawsuit isn't just about Portland, it raises national questions. At stake is the balance between government authority and citizens' rights to protest and safety at home. The outcome could set a precedent for how federal law enforcement operates in cities across America. If DHS is found at fault, agencies may have to limit crowd control weapons near homes, protecting bystanders. Law enforcement argues such limits could make it harder to control riots and protect officers. The case forces a debate. What tools are appropriate for crowd control, and when? It's a test of democratic principles. Where do we draw the line between protest and riot, order and overreach? The story of Gray's Landing is a chapter in the ongoing struggle over the power of the state and the rights of its people. As of January 2026, the lawsuit is just beginning. DHS will respond, likely seeking dismissal, while residents' lawyers gather evidence of harm and constitutional violations. Both sides will enter a lengthy discovery process, collecting documents and testimony. The court must decide whether to grant an injunction, an order to stop DHS from using chemical agents near homes while the case proceeds. Winning an injunction would be a major early victory for residents, but appeals are almost certain. The case could reach higher courts, even the Supreme Court, given the constitutional questions at stake. For Gray's Landing, national attention is here, but true safety and resolution may still be far off.